Page 396, any questions from the homework that you would like me to go over? Yep. 7a, love to. Determine the roots of this quadratic equation. What kind of an equation is it? It's a quadratic. How do I know it's got a squared? Is it equal to 0? Check. GCF? Don't know. Sure would have been nice if there was a GCF of a 3, because then I could have pulled a 3 out and everything's easier to factor. I'm going to look for two numbers, it looks like, that multiply to 9 and add to negative 10. And I'm going to zoom in so you can see what the heck I'm writing. What are two numbers that multiply to 9 and add to negative 10? Negative 9 and negative 1. Because negative times negative is positive. 9. And, oh, was that all? Was that it? I'll keep going anyhow. I drop the 3x squared. I drop the plus 3 and the equals 0. I break this up into negative 9x, negative 1x. Tatiana, GCF from the first two terms. What is the GCF from the first two terms? I know I caught you mid-bite, sorry. What is the GCF of the first two terms? Yep. I've told you guys, if you ever go out for dinner with a friend, you can have a lot of fun. Every time they take a bite, ask a question. And if you do that for the whole meal, they won't notice that you're doing it on purpose, but they'll feel like such a loser. Because, well, I'm hoping to invest my money in, and just wait. And then when they take a bite, how much are you hoping for a return? You've never done that? It's fun. Just saying. GCF from the last two. So, Natasha, there isn't really a GCF. Oh, well, there is. I can always pull out a 1. Although if I pull out a 1, I'm going to have a negative x and a positive 3. And I think what I want, because we said our error check, Joel, is we want the brackets to match. I want a positive x and a negative 3. So instead of pulling out a positive 1, what do I want to factor out? See, I got you. I saw you chewing. I'll ask her right away. It's a bad habit, I know. Negative 1, yep. And I'll get a positive x and a minus 3. My roots, sorry, my factors are that. What are my roots, Kiara? I disagree. Positive 1, right? Change the sign, divide by the coefficient. And positive 3. And if you're bored, you can actually try it, especially if you signed out a good graphing calculator so you can see what's going on. But a standard scientific calculator, I can go 3 times bracket 1/3 squared, 3x squared, minus 10 times 1/3 plus 3. And if I've done it right, it should work out to 0, does it? Yeah, it works in the equation. And so does the 3. Any others from the homework? Yep. 9C. Good question. Okay. 9C looks like it's factored, but is it equal to 0? Then it's not factored. I'm going to have to get rid of brackets, gather like terms, and then rewrite it so that it's equal to 0. In other words, the first thing I'm going to do, in other words, some kids look at this and they go, oh, the roots are 0 and negative 4. That would be if it was equal to 0, but it's not. So I'm going to have to go like this. First, get rid of brackets. I went like that, right? What kind of an equation is this? Quadratic. How do I know? It's got a squared. Before I can solve a quadratic, what do I have to do? Make it equal to what, Nicole? Is it equal to 0? How would I make it equal to 0? I would take this 32 that's got an invisible plus sign in front of it and do what with it, Nicole? Minus it. I'm going to cheat, Kiara. Donk. Ta-da! That's what you get. Now, factor. GCF? No. 3 terms? But these are the nice 3-term ones. I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to negative 32 and add to positive 4. 8 and 4. Positive 8. Kayla, the factors are positive 8 and negative 4. But Kayla, what are the roots? Negative 8, positive 4. What do they add to, a positive or a negative? Then the bigger number's got to be positive. That's really what I'm doing. Okay, so you're okay, you find the 8 and the 4, okay? So then which one's positive? If it's a positive answer, the bigger one. If it's a negative answer, the smaller ones. You could even say the bigger number is that sign. The bigger number is positive, or if there's a negative there, then the bigger number is the negative one. Oh, there's all sorts of other patterns as well. I leave it to you to decipher that. Pardon me? Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's all sorts of those patterns from last year. I would normally have gone into that. Yeah, Kayla, I'm really doing the bare bones of this to try and fit it in. Was that a hand up or a twitch? 3B? And then I'm going to have to pause there because I have to get the lesson done today, because as you can see from the schedule, we ain't got no extra time. 3B? What kind of a quadratic? How do I know? Got it squared. Is it equal to 0? Good. Numbers that multiply to 30 and add to 13. 10 and 3? Isn't that the answer, or does the back of the book say something different? There's a typo. Ah. I will actually email them and let them know. So 3B says negative 3 and negative 10. Isn't that what I got? Oh, your book says negative 3 plus 10? Does all of yours say that? Or maybe it depended on when they print. But apparently they've caught the mistake and have fixed it since they ran the print up. Because I got the electronic copy. Let's assume they changed the electronic copy instantly, right? Okay. Now I know. Problem. Don't write this down, just watch. If I gave you this, no problem. Numbers that multiply to 3 and add to 4. What are two numbers that multiply to 3 and add to 4? Two and 2 don't multiply to 2, although they add to 4. 2 and 1 multiply to 2, don't add to 4. What does that mean? There's no answer? Well, there is, actually. But it's going to be yucky decimals, not stuff we can get in our head. This looks like a job for a formula. We're going to skip a couple lessons. Can you turn to lesson 6, which is on page 415, page 415. Page 415. This is a neat lesson. It's one of my favorites of all time because it's something that looks god-awful ugly, but ends up, when you get the hang of it, not being so ugly. However, you absolutely need a calculator. You might want a graphing one because it's nice if you can backspace and edit. If you don't have a calculator that lets you backspace and edit, you're going to want one, so you either want to sign one out or you want to have one. Because we're going to be typing in something this long twice every time. We're just going to be changing a plus sign to a minus sign. If you can do that by backspacing, hey, happy joy. I'll pause for a moment while people get that. A says, find the roots. Did we just practice finding the roots of a quadratic? Yeah, so we'll skip. Find the roots. This would be the yuckier ones where you use the decomposition method. You get roots that were fractions, but did we just practice that? Yeah, then we'll skip. What about here? Well, to factor this, you would look for two numbers that multiply to positive 10 and add to negative 8. Are there two numbers that multiply to positive 10 and add to negative 8? However, there is an answer. Turn the page. is the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula says this. You want to find x? X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Lightning and thunder should roll in that point. There should have been this rumble off in the distance. The lights should have flashed. You should have got a tingle in your belly. Now, Joe, when kids first see this, they go, my God, that looks terrifying. It's not. It's very careful plug and chug. If you were in Principles of Math 11, I'd make you memorize this. It's not that hard. Back this to the wall. X equals negative b plus minus squared b squared minus 4ac over 2a. And then I would challenge you to say it faster than x equals negative b plus squared b squared minus 4ac. I would challenge you to say it backwards if you're really a nerd. A2 over all CA 4 minus square B root square minus plus B negative equals X. I think that was right. I'm that big a nerd. This is as close as we come to, in math, Shakespearean iambic pentameter, because although you don't know this, this is the only formula in all of math of its type. The quadratic formula, this will solve any quadratic equation. We've known about this one for about 1,000 years. But Natasha, when they found this one, then they asked, hey, is there a formula that will solve an equation with a cubed? Is there a cubic formula? Is there a quartic? Is there an equation that will solve an exponent with a 4? Is there a quartic formula? Is there a quintic? And actually for about 1,000 years they tried to find it. And only about 150 years ago, a mathematician proved there ain't. He proved that you can't find a different one. And it's a long, complicated 40-page proof, but it's convincing. How does it work? See this right here? Right above it, I'd like you to write this. ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And try and line up the squared with the squared and the x with the x and the number with the number. I couldn't quite. I had to write big so you guys could read. Kayla, what we're really saying is, see this hideous formula? You know where the a comes from? The number in front of the squared. Oh, what if there's no number there? Oh, what number is really there? A little invisible what? 1. You know where the b comes from? The number in front of the x. And you know where the c comes from? The constant number. Hey, what if there is no x's? None. Oh, what would none be as a number? 0. B can sometimes be 0. A never will be, because if a is 0, it's not a quadratic. You don't have a squared. But b could sometimes be 0. What if there's no number by itself? Well, that could be 0, 2. The tricky part is typing this in. On your calculators, we are not going to try doing this in one fell swoop. My best students might get the hang of doing this in one fell swoop, but I got to be honest, even me, I don't try doing this all in one line. I always do what's inside the square root first, then I carefully write it out, and then I go to my calculator. Here's what it says. If you want to find any quadratics roots, there are 2 of them. The first one, if you put negative and then the number in front of the b plus the square root of that divided by 2a. The second one, repeat the procedure, but instead of a plus sign, put a minus sign there. It's much easier to do than to explain. But for what it's worth, they're showing you that it would have worked with the previous examples. Let's try it here. Use the quadratic formula to determine the roots of this. Page 417. Okay. Kayla, this is not the place to take shortcuts. Far too easy to make a mistake. So the first thing that I always do when they say use the quadratic formula, off in the margin I write down a equals b equals c equals. Here's my equation. What's a? Kayla, 2. It's alphabetical, which hopefully you'll be able to remember it really easy. Right, Zach? A is 2. What's b? Negative. Thank you for catching the negative. What's c? Now what? I always write out the quadratic formula. What is the quadratic formula? X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. It's worth writing out because it's too easy to make a mistake. The trickiest part is the square root, so now what I do is I duck off to the margin and I actually write out b squared minus 4ac. That's what's inside the square root. See it there, Joel? And I'm going to plug in the numbers. Zach, what did you say b was? What's negative 8 squared? It's 64, but if you can't remember, just write negative 8. Put the negative in brackets, though, because your calculators otherwise will act different. Minus 4. Zach, what did you say a was? What did you say c was? What's going to be inside the square root? Crunch it. Calculator. All of you, go. Yes, you. Now, if you're using the graphing one, let me get rid of this one. Dunk. Bring up this one. I would go menu, run, bracket, negative 8. There's the squared. Minus 4 times 2 times 5. I use timeses rather than brackets on calculators because it's easier to see what's going on. What's inside the square root? 24? Yes, 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 yes. Draw a little line over here. Let's go back to here. Jacob, can you read this to me? What was b? What's negative b? What's negative 8? Plus or minus means we're going to do this equation twice. Square root of what actually worked out inside the square root? 24. All divided by. Now, if this was a yucky number, I wouldn't do it in my head, but Zach, what did you tell me a was? If it was a decimal, I'd go 2 times the decimal, but you know, do some math in your head. How do I type this in to get an answer? We call this the exact value answer, by the way, because we get yucky decimals. Get out your calculator. Is there more than one number on the top? Brackets. So you're going to go like this. Bracket 8 plus square root on the graphing calculator is a second function x squared. 24, close bracket, divided by 4. This is one of your roots. 3.22474. I told you they're going to be decimals. I usually go to 3 decimal places. 3.225. And I call that the first root. I call it x1. 3.225. What's the second root? Instead of a plus sign right here, Sam put what? And that's why if you can go left arrow, backspace, 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 delete the plus sign and put a minus sign there, you save yourself a lot of typing. Especially if your scientific calculators do it even better. You know what the second root is? 0.775. I won't make you memorize the quadratic formula. I'll give it to you on your test. In principles, I did. I felt it was actually worth it. Oh, I'll even show you that this actually does work, by the way. If I go this number 2 times, where's my answer button? That squared minus 8 times that plus 5 right here works out to 0. I don't think you would have found that, Emma, by factoring. In fact, you can't find it by factoring. I'll show you the other one works as well. Dope. Two times 3.225 squared minus 8 times 3.225 plus 5. It doesn't quite equal 0 because I rounded off. It equals 0.00125. It's close to 0. You're going to round off a little bit. That's the quadratic formula. Can you turn to assignment page 418, number 1? Number 1. It says solve this by inspection and by the quadratic formula. This will actually factor, but I want to show you the quadratic formula also works. What kind of an equation is this? It's a quadratic. How do I know it has a squared? Joel, is it equal to 0? Let's see if it will factor. Are there two numbers that multiply to negative 10 and add to negative 3? Then let's factor because that's faster. Right? Okay, which way are the signs going to go, Joel? First of all, one has to be positive, one has to be negative because they multiply to a negative, right? This number here, is it negative? Then the bigger number is negative. What are the roots? Let's try it using the quadratic formula. In this case, what would A be? The number in front of the x squared. It's invisible. What would B be? What would C be? Quadratic formula says x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. I usually go off in the margin somewhere and I do the square root first. B squared minus 4ac is going to be negative 3. I need more room, Mr. Dueck. I'll go off in the margin up here. B squared minus 4ac is going to be negative 3 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 10. What does that work out to? Sorry? 49? So I get this. X equals. What's B? Sam, what's B? What's negative B? 3. Plus or minus the square root of 49 divided by, oh, Sam, in your head, what's 2a? Oh, this square root works out evenly, unlike the square root of 24. What is the square root of 49? You know what? This is going to be 3 plus or minus 7 over 2. And I can do this in my head. You see, it's going to be either, Emma, 3 plus 7. Okay, what is, Emma, 3 plus 7? Over 2. Or 3 minus 7, which is negative 4 over 2. Same roots we got over here by factoring. So the quadratic formula works for ones that do factor, but I wouldn't use, this is faster, yes? Slower, but you can check your answer. Works all the time, works all the time, works sometimes faster, slower. If it doesn't factor, how do you know it doesn't factor? You try finding the two numbers that multiply to whatever and add to whatever, and you can't. Or they'll say, solve using the quadratic formula. Okay. Let's try number 3. If number 3 factored, Kayla, there would be numbers that multiply to positive 6 and add to positive 5. Are there numbers that multiply to positive 6 and add to positive 5? Oh, 3 and 2. This one factors. I'm not going to use the quadratic formula. Let's try number 4. If this factored, there would be two numbers that multiply to negative 8 and add to positive 1. Are there? This is a job for the quadratic formula. Okay? So let's draw the line like this so we have lots of room. Let's make a little list here. What's A? What's B? What's C? Negative 4. Since I have room up here, I'm going to write the quadratic formula up here. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Put your pencils down. Kara, I've taught you to do the square root first. The reason you can do this all in one line, you can go bracket negative b plus square root bracket b squared minus 4 times a times c, close off the square root, close off the top, divided by 4. Can you see that it becomes lots of room to go, oops. So I learned a long time ago, do the square root first. One squared minus 4 times a, 2 times c, negative 4. What does the inside of the square root work out to? $33? Or am I wrong? 33, yeah. So, x is going to be negative b. What am I going to write? What's b? What's negative b? Right, Zach? Plus or minus the square root of 33 b squared minus 4ac all over. I think I can do the 2a in my head again. If not, I would put brackets around the bottom and do 2a, Sam, 4. Give me the roots and give me them to 3 decimal places, please. There's more than one number on the top. That means, Joe, put brackets around the top. Negative 1 plus square root of 33 over 4. I get One of my roots is negative 1.686. That's when I put a minus there. What about when you put a plus there? What did you get? Am I wrong? Oh, people are shrugging at me. Maybe I'm wrong.
I'm sorry, please excuse this interruption, but can I please have Nicole Foster come to the office? Nicole Foster, come to the office, please.
And is one of your roots 1.186? Yeah. Yeah. Does it matter whether you do minus first and then plus first and then minus? No, just do them both, please. Okay. And this is our lazy way of not writing it out twice, right? It's really negative 1 plus the square root of 33 over 4 and negative 1 minus the square root of 33 over 4. Try B on your own. Let's see if we all get that. If we do, I'm done. I'll freeze the screen. Oh, he's going to get a calculator and signing one out properly. And signing one out properly. Yo! Good, then let me come look, because it probably means that there's something wonky with bracket. Let me know, because okay, so it's probably a typing issue. So don't clear your calculator. Number 7. And let's do 7 A. 7A. What kind of an equation is 7A? Quadratic, how do you know? It's got a squared. To solve it, what do I have to do first? Is it equal to 0? Nope. I hate the quadratic term being negative, so although I could minus this to this side, let's move both of these to this side. How? Natasha will minus both of them. It's got a T instead of an X, but I'll just pretend it's an X, Joel. Yes? If it factored, I'd look for two numbers that multiply to negative 10 and add to negative 7. There aren't any. 5 and 2 add to 7, but one's got to be positive, one's got to be negative. I can't make that work. This does not factor. This does not factor. So, try the quadratic formula, folks. I'll write it out up here. And this will be my last one, and then you're free. I think your square root should be an 89, I think. Yes? See if you get what I got. This is the quadratic formula. Who's in physics? Chelsea, if physics team, this is what you need to solve off cliffs at an angle, which is why I can't really do it, because I can't assume everyone's seen it. The d equals vi, t plus a half a t squared equation. It's a quadratic. You make it equal to 0 and you solve it. Any questions at all? How many got that okay? Some of you? No? You couldn't have. Take a look, please, very quickly at the two sheets that I just gave you, called quadratics. What letters did I call them? G and H. And then I'll turn you loose. You need to do these on a separate piece of paper, obviously, and you need a lot of practice to do these. So all of these have quadratic equations. Hopefully quadratic G will open any second now. Here we go. I said here we go. Come on. Make it a little larger. That's factoring G, Mr. Dueck. Wrong one. You want quadratics G. That's this one. First of all, what I've done is they left some of the answers as what are called exact values. If you look really closely, though, I went and I either typed or hand wrote on top of this. So you can, if you get those answers right there, if you get 6.16 and negative 0.16, I know it's small, That's that one. If you get 18.6 and 5.37, that should be that one. These are all quadratic equations, but you're probably going to have to go minus 16 from both sides. Probably have to go plus 21 from both sides. If they factor, and some of these will, the ones that didn't work out to yucky decimal answers will factor. If you can find two numbers that multiply, whatever, use the factoring method. Otherwise, you'll have to use the quadratic equation method. Take a look at quadratics H. A couple of these will factor, most of them will not, and you'll have to use the quadratic formula for. The reason a couple of these will factor is these ones aren't decimals, these ones aren't decimals, these ones aren't epidecimals. These ones are, although they left them, that's what you should get on your calculator, that's what you should get as a decimal. That's what you might get on your calculator, that's what you should get as a decimal, that's what you should get as a decimal when you have that on your calculator. Okay? We are done the unit. When I see you next, I just have some more practice, one more quadratics, and then some solve by factoring questions to practice as well. That's Friday. Your test is Monday. I'll have time to do a take-home quiz. So, Joel, it's going to be up to you to see whether or not you understand this. You'll actually need to do the homework and practice this. You have the remainder of class, and I'm also going to be checking some of you for your fact.